All right, guys, let's welcome Jymmy Tolland from The Lonely Ones to the podcast, man. How you been?
I'm doing good, buddy. How about you?
Not too bad, man. I hate to say it, man. I'm a bass player myself, but if you go to Central Casting and say, I need a bass player, they're going to give you Jymmy Tolland, man. You look the part. It's like you couldn't do anything else in your life but be a bass player. It's pretty awesome.
It's always the tall one.
The tall, lanky one, the Duff McKagans of the world. Very jealous of that, man. What a time to change your name from Bobaflex to the Lonely Ones. Start a new project, and then bam, COVID hits, man. How was all that for you guys, man?
Man, it was what a time. It was a good way to put it, man. It was like we decided to do the split. Technically, Bobaflex still exists. This is like a fully separate entity from Bobaflex, and we figured out we were going to do that like late summer 2019. And man, we got everything going. We started getting songs together, started kind of building up a little bit of a team around us and whatnot, thinking everything's all going to be great. Set the release date for the first single for March 13th. Which, we set that like when we'd heard of COVID, but we didn't really it was just over in China. It was a little problem. It wasn't, it was like, oh, it ain't going to come here. March 12th is when all the stay-at-home orders went into place. So we had this whole plan that we had to like a train try not to run over the dame that's tied up. We had to pull the brakes on that so we didn't blow the whole thing.
Yeah,
it was rough, man. It was really rough. We're still like just now, with the label we signed with Imagine Records, like just now we're starting to refigure out what the plan is, because it's just been floating in the air for the last 9 months or so.
Yeah, I mean, you guys have been constantly putting out videos. You did the flash cover, just kind of keeping everybody abreast of what's going on. I saw you've done some live streams, some live stuff here and there, Q&A type stuff and things like that. So I mean, you've definitely taken to the internet to try to keep everybody involved, to where normally you would go on tour to do this.
Exactly. It's been kind of a lesson in what's the phrase, like necessity breeds creativity, right. I think is the term. Where like nobody knows what to do, or nobody knew what to do, I should say, come March, April, May, June. Everybody was just figuring out like, how do I exist as a musician in this day and age? I can't just keep putting music out, because as you know, a lot of that is made back off touring. You kind of you take a loss at the beginning to open up your touring income. So it's like, I can't just keep putting music out. How do I get the money coming in? How do I keep the business afloat? And in our case, how do I make people aware of the band in the first place? Because there's so many people who, even if they were Bobaflex fans, they don't know about the switch, or they weren't plugged in enough to understand what was going on. So they just, we're just a new band to a lot of people. So how do we put ourselves in front of them for that? And it's been, a lot of darts thrown at the wall, hoping we get some bullseyes, man.
So how has the name change affected everything, the business, the day-to-day stuff, trying to let everybody know that, the 4 of the 5 are still together and we're still a band, we're just doing it under a different name?
Oddly enough, obviously we were booking shows before COVID, and we still have shows booked. We've just been constantly kind of rescheduling them every time we realize how bad the situation is, and we have to move them back another 5 months. But it really has not affected our, the shows we're booking. I was really worried about okay, new band, you take the name Bobaflex away. What do we have? Am I going to be out here playing for Breadcrumbs on a night-to-night basis? And that really has not been affected. Which is kind of a nice change of pace, because there's been so many things that, I was worried about losing ground on. The big change, all things considered, has been COVID.
Yeah.
And figuring out what to do in that. And I guess I kind of interlace the two, new band and COVID, together, because you can't separate them.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing, when bands go out on tour and, you can take a Quiet Riot who has no original members, but they still have the name Quiet Riot, throw it on a bill, and people are going to come out because they're going to want to hear the classic Quiet Riot tunes. And they might not even know a single original member in the band,
Mhm.
so there's a big, the band versus brand thing. So I mean, you're
Yeah.
taking the brand of Bobaflex and taking that away, and then giving people the lonely ones. And it's good to hear that the touring income side of it wasn't affected as much,
Yeah. Yeah,
because
that's a good way to put it. I like that. I'm sorry, go ahead. You were saying something.
no, I'm just saying that a lot of promoters are gonna be like, all right, cool, we got Bobaflex coming through, so we'll throw that on a thing, rather than like, all right, we got the lonely ones, we got to let everybody know that it was some of the guys from Bobaflex, and it's a little bit more work than just throwing Bobaflex on the marquee.
Most definitely. That's a really good kind of point you made about a band, like Quiet Riot or whoever, because we are in that polar flip-flop kind of scenario where we are purely relying on do people like us as musicians,
Yeah.
as songwriters, as entertainers, having nothing to do with the name. And it's kind of cool seeing people, really embracing the new music that we're putting out, because it makes me feel a little bit more like, okay, cool, we're good at what we do. Not so much they were just buying it because they know the name Bobaflex, or they're streaming it because they know the name Bobaflex. It's really been cool to watch. It's been kind of empowering.
What Obviously, you being in the band since about 2015, I think is when you came in, around that time.
2014, yeah. But yeah.
So relatively a short amount of time in the history of the band. So I mean, you come into Bobaflex, you come into a big name, and then you're like, oh crap, we're taking that name away. I mean, were you worried personally about the name change?
Oh God, yeah. Yeah, Marty and I joked, he and I are both talkers, and we walk when we talk. So when everything went down over summer 2019, and we kind of realized like, okay, cool, we have to plan what the four of us are going to do. Because we weren't sure, are we continuing on as Bobaflex? Are we starting a new band? Are we just changing the name but playing the old material? Whatever. All those problems we were running in, or all those problems we had to solve, we ended up walking so much. We were out on tour, walking so much all over California and Texas that we both wore holes through our boots, stressing about all that stuff, man. And it was really like about a month of us feeling like we were just like floating at sea, almost like somebody just dropped you on a deserted island or something. Said, you got to figure out, get yourself off the island, figure it out. No help.
And then also add COVID to all of that, man. That's pretty nuts.
Yeah. Lest we forget that, huh?
Right. We've talked about, you guys kind of kept busy doing covers, and obviously Brian May and Sam Jones both came out, are praising the Flash cover. So kind of talk a little bit about how awesome that was, that they came out and said, positive things, and then, breaking down that song and, recording and just everything that kind of went in with Flash.
Man, that was a hell of a lot of a process. We did that through Sweetwater Sound, where we engineered that song. And then we ended up taking it back to our home base studio and doing a little bit of retracking and mixing at a place called Sonic Lounge Studios in Grove City, Ohio, just south of where I live. And it was like, we thought we were onto something cool with it. And we had it done, and all of a sudden everything starts really hitting with COVID. And we knew that we wanted to release that just because for a new band, I figured that would be a good, like, hey, look at us, we did a Queen cover kind of scenario. And COVID started really happening, and all the dominoes started falling. So we rushed ourselves in, called up our friend Keith Williams, who shoots a lot of our music videos. And it was literally just us at the studio with our girlfriends hanging out. That was all we got together. So we were like, we got to make a video. Don't know when it's coming out, but we need a piece of content to release with this. So we ended up putting it out like months and months and months later after the fact. And through Shauna O'Donnell, our publicist, she was working that single and was really attacking it from all angles. And we knew that our goal was to get it to Brian May. You know what I mean? That's just because that would lend so much legitimacy to the band. And she was going at all these different angles of people who she knew she could get in touch with him from here. And then finally, I actually did an interview that she had set up with a friend of Sam Jones, who I didn't know that at the time, of course, but he was like, yeah, I know Sam Jones. Here, let me send it over to him. And then finally Sam Jones sent it over, and Shauna had coordinated that with him. She got into it was a whole like firestorm of her working her ass off with Sam Jones. Finally, we got the quote, and I woke up at like 7 a.m. one morning to an email that said Brian May quote, and just sat there and like read it and got hair raising up on the back of my neck and everything.
I made it. Brian May knows who I am.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about like, I don't ever like to like rest on any sort of win or anything, but that was about half an hour there where I just sat there like, oh man. He said that was magnificent was his word. That's cool. I'll take that and frame that up on the wall.
I'll take that all day. Yeah, man, that's gonna be nuts. And then obviously the latest single, the Change the Station, obviously a lot of political unrest with that one. And I don't watch the news, because it's you don't know which slant you're getting from what side. And, I don't know if there's anyone actually out there giving the news that's not biased in any kind of way. So, I mean, it's kind of crazy to hear that song kind of tackling that subject and, basically just change the station, let's turn MTV or something classic.
It's really like, to speak for Marty, I guess, because he's the one that wrote the lyrics to that. It was we were going through a period like in fall of last year, right before we recorded that song, where we were showing up to rehearsal every single day. And this is, keep in mind, this is the lead up to the election and all that. And daily, I'm spending 2 hours talking to the rest of the guys in the band about everything that happened in the last 24 hours. Like, there's that much going on that's like world-ending news that every day I'm taking time out of our rehearsal to be like, can you believe this happened? Can you believe this happened? This tour bus, this whatever. All that. And it was just kind of an indictment of like, man, chill out. Damn.
Oh yeah. It's completely nuts, man. Just the entire political landscape and everything's kind of calmed down a little bit, but obviously not a political show, but man, what a jam of a song.
Thank you very much. Yeah. I appreciate that.
I did have one more thing on Flash, getting back to the vocal side of that, man, how tackling that vocally, were you involved in that? I know the video shows you singing a little bit, but did you sing in the studio? And, how many tracks of vocals is that? About 30?
That was, let's see, that was, I think that was a 20 stack on the Flash. Yeah. I believe it was 2 of me, 2 of Jake and Marty, maybe, I think. And then 4 of each of those harmonies. So multiply that 5 by 4. I think it's 20 vocals every time. And I get the Roger Taylor harmonies, the way up high ones. Yeah. So I can do those falsettos all right. But yeah, that was a huge challenge in itself, because normally, it's like, all right, cool, we learn our bass parts, our guitar parts, Marty learns the words, and then we just harmonize. But in this case, it's like I'm sitting there with headphones on, writing out like, okay, I think that he's starting on this interval of the note, and like trying to draw out what the stacks are of harmonies, because they're so interwoven and well built that pulling them apart and understanding who's singing what where, and then picking which band members can be best suited to do that was a huge task in itself, really.
Yeah, that's way above my pay grade on that one.
It was a lot. I've never written down notes about music before. I had like pages, like a whole composition book filled up of notes about that song.
So the Lonely Ones page on Cliff Burton's birthday, obviously wished him happy birthday with a photo of you. It's basically saying, your music lives on type stuff. So are you a big Cliff Burton fan, or was that just a nice thing for them to do?
Marty is an exceptionally huge, Marty and Tommy both are huge Metallica fans. I like Metallica. I would say that if I was going to take an influence from somebody in Metallica, it was Cliff Burton, just because I liked his innovation on the bass. You know what I mean? He pushed it forward. Nobody was doing what he was doing in 1986 or 83, as it were. I mean, just anybody that pushes something that could be so basic and nobody would care if it was basic.
Right.
You know, nobody cares if the bass is just playing real simple behind everything. But the fact that he didn't do that and he ran with it was really cool. I thought I try to take influence from that sometimes.
Yeah, some of his coolest stuff was maybe on the like Call of Cthulhu and things like that, where you're not realizing that some of those growls in the background are him, you know, through distortion and wahs and things like that, just making monster sounds with his bass.
Yeah, it was violent sounding, man. There's plenty of times where I didn't realize it wasn't a 6-string guitar doing it.
So, you know, me being a bass player, you being a bass player, what drew you to the instrument? Were you a guitar player first, switched to bass? You know, what was your pathway to playing bass?
You know, it's really not a sexy story, but I just needed a gig. I wanted to be a guitar player when I was about 19, and I'd moved across country to pursue guitar, and really kind of realized like, oh, you're not that good at guitar. Just because you're the best guitar player in your high school does not mean that you can hang anywhere near dudes that are, you know, in their late 20s or their 30s that have been doing it as long as you've been alive. And there was a band, funnily enough, a band that Marty was managing at the time, that called me up. We had become friends and said, hey, I know you're a guitar player. We desperately need a bass player, like ASAP. You in? And I went, yeah, and sold a bunch of my guitar gear and bought a bunch of bass stuff and never looked back.
So they're like, we think you look more like a bass player. So
they said, you're tall. You're tall. Go buy a bass.
Nice. Your Facebook says you grew up in Tacoma and then moved. Yes. So where did you move to?
Columbus, Ohio.
Oh, the hot mecca of music right there.
Yeah. It was it really, like, I couldn't stop hearing about it. You know, those moments in life just where, you know, just something is telling you go do this. Mm-hmm. There was a couple things in a row that kept pointing me to Columbus, Ohio, all at the same time. And I've just always been that type of person. It's like, okay, cool. I'm not spiritual, but I believe that, like, I know what I want, even if I don't realize it, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And I started feeling that, just went, all right, fuck it, let's go. And put the car in drive, loaded it up, and drove across country like the next week.
Wow. Was the end goal, was it Bobaflex, or was it, you know, you knew the guys in Bobaflex or any of that stuff, or it was just random band?
I had heard of the band that I ended up joining. I knew those guys. That was part of the reason why I moved out here, was because I at least knew somebody. I knew I wanted to leave my hometown. That's a family tradition. And but just didn't know really where to go. And part of the thing that helped me was, oh, these guys are here. So through them, I had heard the name Bobaflex, but I wasn't really familiar with the band like that. I couldn't have told you a Bobaflex song when I moved.
So, you know, if you're in Tacoma, you know, why don't you stay in the Seattle area, go to LA, you know, of all places in the world, you know, like the Columbus, Ohio does not seem to be the one. If you're going to go east, you know, you would go to New York or something like that. So, I mean, was there other members of bands there, like, or was just Columbus, Ohio just drew you?
No, I could just afford it. I mean, I was living at my parents' house in Tacoma. I had burned through all of my options in Tacoma, Seattle. That's off the table. So from there, I could move to Portland, but then I'm like 2 hours from home. That's not cool. Couldn't afford California, couldn't afford New York. At the time, it was a little bit before Austin, Texas was popping. I kind of thought about moving to Austin, but I didn't know anybody there. So, you know, it was, you can move to Austin or you can move to Columbus where you know people. It was really like I shaved all the options away fast.
Yeah, I mean, Columbus is kind of a good central point too. Cincinnati and Cleveland, and you got
Chicago's 6 hours away, Indy's 4, Minneapolis is only 10 hours, 11 hours away. Like almost everything worth going to on the East Coast or on the Eastern U.S. is within a day's drive. It's a great spot to be in a band.
Yeah, because I mean, even back when I toured, you know, getting to Seattle was, you know, one tour out of so many because it's just so far up in the corner. You know, you have to do Portland, you have to do Seattle, try to get somewhere in Montana on the way back. You know, getting up there was always a pain. How were shows up there? Did a lot of big shows come through?
When I lived there, sometimes, but it was like, you got to keep in mind too, I was underage, and Washington is much more strict about going to shows when you're underage. Basically, if they serve alcohol, you're not allowed in there unless it's a sit-down restaurant. Yeah. So like there were shows that came through, but I was 19 years old, and 2 years is a long time when you're 19. I could sit around waiting, you know what I mean? And so all I could do was go to these underage shows, and those are like at 5 p.m. because they stopped selling alcohol for X amount of hours to let a bunch of kids come in and drink soda. It was cool, but I couldn't see myself making a career out of it, and I definitely wasn't going to wait a couple of years for it.
So you were 19 when you left?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
Fresh out of high school.
Nice. Good times, man. So yeah, I guess it worked out for you then.
Yeah, it was on paper, it's a horrible decision. Really, like looking back, I was like, man, that was dumb, but it just worked out. Move out. I didn't have any money or nothing. I just lived in my car for 28 days or something. Slept in my car till I found a job.
Too funny, man. Too funny. Speaking of cars, I guess we can go right into that. Tell me this AAA car fiasco that you posted about.
Dude, I can't believe you're asking me about this. Okay. I'll tell you part A of the story, but there's a new part B that you're the first person to hear about. I haven't even told anybody but my girlfriend about this yet. So long story short, I've got the coolest car under the fucking sun. Actually bought it from Marty, who got it from his dad. It's a 1991 Lincoln Mark 7 with the 5.0 in it. Car guys love it. I'm not a car guy, but people have literally come up to me, and when Marty owned it, come up to him and said, how much for that car? I'm a collector. I want that so bad. Is it for sale? Can I buy it off you? Whatever. Older car, sat for a while, had some fuel issues, had a minor issue with the fuel line that rendered it to where I couldn't drive it to a shop. So I had to get it towed to my buddy's shop. Tow truck driver puts it on gets it ready to put it up on the wrecker. And, there's the ignition lock that prevents you from turning the steering wheel. He didn't turn that. I don't know if it was his first day or what, but bust my steering column. Busted it so bad, in fact, that we were buying parts left and right trying to replace it. And me and my buddy cannot get it figured out. Not that I'm helping. I'm not a car guy, but my buddy can't get it. So after all this, 6 months of trying to get it, bumming rides, finally I buy myself a new vehicle, and I'm just going to use this all right, maybe I'll get it figured out someday, whatever. Finally, I give up, about to take it to a scrap yard. So that was what you saw online. That's where part A stops. The day after I post that online, another mechanic buddy of mine hits me up that I hadn't talked to in probably a year or two at this point. And he goes, hey, what are you doing with the Lincoln? And I go, I'm just going to scrap it, dude. I'm over it, whatever. He's like, no, I'll fix it. I'm like, yeah, all right. I've had 5 mechanics at this point tell me they're going to fix it. He said, listen, I'll get it towed up there. I know you're tired of paying for tows. I've had it towed all over the state of Ohio at this point. So I'll get it up there, and either I'll buy it off you or I'll fix it and you can pay me for the work. One of the two, depending on how much it's going to cost. I go, sure, whatever, no risk to me. 2 hours ago, this guy calls me and goes, I got the steering column in.
Crazy.
Yeah, so now I have 2 cars, which is something I never wanted. So I'm gonna have to figure that out. I'll just pick which one I want to drive for a month at a time and pay the insurance on that.
There you go. Yeah. It's well, I mean, that if the Lincoln's in high demand, maybe you make a little bit of money that you haven't had during COVID time. So
yeah, well, the thing is, I don't want to sell that car. That's my dream car. I love that thing forever. So I'll just, even if I wait until it's summertime, I want to go out and cruise, take the insurance off the van for a while, whatever. I'll figure it out, man. But it was just crazy. It's funny you asked that because I haven't talked about the Lincoln in a month to anybody. And you asked me 2 hours after the guy called me up, telling me he fixed it.
Well, my favorite part of the story is, they basically looked at themselves and said well, actually, we weren't at fault here. So,
isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Nobody's ever let me do that.
Yeah.
I don't get when I get pulled over for driving too fast in that car, they don't let me investigate myself and decide if I was at fault.
Well, it's like I got hit back in April, and when I was going, I mean, it was 100% obvious that it was the lady's fault.
Yeah.
She out and T-boned me, shot me into the the ditch, and all this other crazy
intersection there, like just a
no,
four-way?
I was going down like an old highway road, and she was looking this way, and I was coming this way. So when she thought she could go, she just came out and hit me.
Jesus.
And then so I talked to her insurance, and then when they did their findings, they came back that I was 15% at fault. I was like, how am I 15% at fault of nothing? So I ended up having to go through my insurance, and they fought it, and then they basically came to the conclusion that it was all her fault. But I was like, who says I was 15% at fault? And
I didn't know I didn't know that they broke it down like that. All I'd ever heard was your fault, my fault, or like shared. Is that like, how do they break down the percentage?
They were trying to say that they were trying, no, they didn't break it down, but they tried to say that it had rained earlier that day, and I was actually driving the speed limit. But since it had rained earlier in the day, I should have been going slower because the roads were slicker. And so basically what they were trying to do is, instead of paying 100% of the damage, they were trying to pay 85% of it.
Trying to get you on anything. Yeah. I mean, I've pulled that move when I don't want to pay somebody all the money I owe them to.
Right. You're like, actually, you know what?
I don't know.
You only played about
yesterday. Let's take 10% off.
You only played about 85% of that guitar solo. So
yeah. So we're going to dock 15 off you.
You left a few notes out. No, it was crazy, man. I ended up doing about 10 grand worth of damage. So
Jesus Christ, man. What a nightmare.
Hit me right on the back rear axle. It was pretty nuts.
Were you physically okay?
Yeah, I was fine. She was fine. She was driving like a Honda CRV, tore her car to pieces. Luckily my Jeep was fine, but it was still 10 grand worth of damage. But it was much fun.
My plan is always like, I want that to happen, but like with a Coca-Cola truck.
Yeah, there you go.
I just turn and I always did the joke that like if they did it, I'd get out of the car and I'd be going, and I'd be smiling and all that. My neck hurts, guys. Ow.
Well, if that does happen, I will take this video down immediately. So
yeah. Cut that out if I ever get into a Coca-Cola truck wreck.
Lonely One's bass player hit today by Coca-Cola truck. Oh shit!
They reference a podcast from 2021 as evidence that he was totally a faker.
Yeah, no, that's like that. Tracy Morgan getting hit by that Walmart truck, man. He got paid off of that too. Obviously, some injuries and things like that, but he probably paid for a few specials off of that one.
Yeah, didn't he almost die from that? Like that was bad, right?
Yeah, it was real bad.
Yeah, it messed his neck up and everything.
But I'm pretty sure he owns part of Walmart now.
God, you'd call it Tracy Martin.
Right. So good, man. Well, as we're kind of wrapping this one up, man, what's the next few months look like? Singles? Are you guys just going to continue to release singles and hopefully an album at some point, or what are we looking at?
Yeah, via Imagine Records, we're going to be releasing an EP. And until then, we're just going to be putting out singles. We're probably looking at summer for the EP. And until then, it's going to be singles here pretty soon. I can't give you an exact date, but we're going to be announcing a bunch of shows for late summer and fall. We'll be putting all those out here soon. We actually have, I don't know what day this comes out, but we do have a real big announcement March 10th that I can't talk about yet. But if you see it before March 10th, check us out on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and all that. We got some pretty cool news coming. But yeah, man, stream the single, add it to your playlist, all that algorithmic stuff that I've had to learn. Never thought I'd have to. Follow us on social media. We're doing it ourselves. So if you talk to somebody, you're talking to me, talking to Marty, you're talking to Jake online. Not Tommy. He's shy. He don't talk to nobody.
He doesn't have a phone. But yeah, but you actually, in the Ohio area, a lot of those places around there are starting to, a lot of these, because I'm right outside Louisville. So I mean, I'm in the country too.
Yeah.
And a lot of these places out here, are like, masks are optional. Most of these, gas stations and grocery stores and everything else, people are a little bit more relaxed out here. So, I mean, I'm sure a BC market tour wouldn't be too out of the question to play some of these smaller towns.
We kind of based all this. We're playing a lot of A markets on this run, but a lot of it is based on kind of what the projections for vaccine rollouts are looking like. With all the new stuff that Joe Biden put into place, where they're expecting 100 million vaccines in the first 100 days, and they're expecting 200 million or something, 250 million, I think, by midsummer. All of our dates are kind of based on after that, and we have some pretty close friends who are pretty knowledgeable about what's it called, the R2 rate and all that, where they talk about how infectious the disease is, what percentage of herd immunity, all that. They're like, basically, if everything goes the way it seems to be going, you should be good by July. So we're rolling the dice on that. I don't want to take any risks. I don't want to get anybody sick. I haven't had COVID yet. I don't want to get sick. Don't want to be responsible for anybody's, pain, suffering, hurt, and all that. We're waiting, giving an extra month being on that. And hopefully everything keeps going the way it's going, because right now we're on pace to be playing a bunch of shows on the back half of the year. Nice.
Whoever thought you'd have to know about algorithms and herd immunity and all this other stuff? You're like, dude, I just want to play bass and rock.
When I was 19, moved out here, I thought if you just learn to play guitar well enough, you'll never have to worry about anything, and you'll just be a millionaire and you'll be famous. And turns out I'm staring at charts and cross-referencing other bands and what they're doing at the same point in their release cycle. It's a nightmare. It's awful. I hate it.
You got to go state by state. I guess we can play 12 shows in Florida right now, but that's about it.
Yeah.
It's been a crazy time, man. But Jymmy, man,
pedal to the metal.
Oh yeah, man. I Jymmy, man, I appreciate the time today.
Thank you, Josh.